Dear YouTube reviewer, I will not be showing any graphic anything in today's video. Just an FYI. I can edit. Thanks. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's excellent to have you here as always. Thank you for watching. You're watching the VSO Gun Channel. And today we're doing another one of those learn from somebody else's mistakes videos. And while we will be deriving entertainment from the idiocy of someone, and we will absolutely be making fun of the perpetrator of the incident in this video, I want to remind you that we are going to be talking about a negligent discharge that resulted in an injury. And I think the reason this one popped out, I mean, besides the fact that it's going around the gram, many of you sent it to me and asked me to analyze it, is that this happened at a gun store. Because of that fact, this provides a unique opportunity to do a couple things. First is etiquette. So not only for the patrons, but also the staff of the store, and also as far as the establishment level of things is concerned, standard operating procedures to prevent things like this from happening in the future within your establishment, if you plan to run or are running one, but also some just absolutely crimson red flags that if you see something like this happening, you just walk out of the store, right? That's what we're going to be getting into, but real quick, we're going to hear a word from our sponsor. Now, this is a brand that is well known to many of you over the years, producing many, many accessories that we all use and love. But today, we're talking about their backpacks. The Acro is their spin on the gray man concept, and they're among the few that have actually executed it in a way that is effective. It has concealed carry and armor considerations, and a package that looks modern rather than the typical stuff that we get in a tactical bag. And that's really the whole point. We want that bag to say, that dude is hauling a picnic of avocado and kale sandwiches with a side of oat milk, not an MP5 SD and 3 extra mags. And new for 2024, they have added a line of drinkware, mocked up to look like various things. YouTube is really going to hate this. Mission First offers VSO viewers a hefty discount with my code that you can find over at the affiliates page, and I want to say thank you very much to them for making today's video possible. All right, so first things first, as far as looking at this video, there's a couple things that jump out at me. This is clearly not within the United States. There are a couple context clues. First off, if you look at the camera, it's got some kind of label here that is not in English, but I also see a sign here that's in predominantly Spanish. So I'm going to say that this is probably, if I had to venture a guess, I would say probably Brazil. If I can think off the top of my head of Spanish-speaking countries that have civilian firearms ownership and stuff like that, I would guess that this is in Brazil. It's really hard for me to tell because the article that posted it originally is all in Spanish, and I don't speak gibberish. I can barely speak English as it is. And that's a really important context to understand because, I guess to put it succinctly, when it comes to guns, America is king. Like, weapons are our culture. That whole thing from The Mandalorian where weapons are my religion, yeah, that was allegory for Americanism. And that's an important thing to understand because around the right to keep and bear arms, as far as integration in a broad sense of weapons into our society, necessitates the construction of a structure around the right to keep and bear arms to keep the employment, ownership, and bearing of those arms safe. And anybody who can hold a candle to our torch when it comes to weapons handling or tactics or any sort of that kind of thing emulates us at every opportunity, and when they deviate, they typically end up several decades behind. If you need any confirmation of that, you need to look no further than some of the videos that came out of Israel. Basically took our money, took our weapons, and didn't listen to anything else we had to say, and as a result, they do everything ass backwards from us. Anywho, what I'm trying to say is that the whole structure of like the 4 rules of firearm safety might be completely absent from the narrative that we're looking at here, but that does not mean that American gun shops are impervious from this, particularly with the massive influx of new gun owners because of the political turmoil and all that sort of stuff that is being wrought on our country by our idiot leaders and all that sort of stuff. Another day, another video. Just keep your eyes open there, folks. If you see anything like this, let's go to the video. And now I'm going to direct your attention down to the bottom left-hand corner. We got guy in red, guy in gray. Guy in red is snoo, situationally incompetent, negligent user, and guy in gray is opit, occupying wrong place and time. We'll refer to them this way to protect their identities. Opit here is seriously considering this handgun, and he's there with his buddy Schnoo. Schnoo is trying to walk him over how the handgun works, and the first thing that you got to do is, of course, take it apart and look at the insides, right? Well, Schnoo must have something like this at home because he's trying to get it apart, but he can't figure out what he's doing. He's banging around with it, and he can't quite figure out what he's doing wrong. And what he's actually doing wrong is you've got to take the magazine out of it. When he sits it on the counter here, you can see that that is indeed the case. In the absence of being able to decipher what is wrong with it, he decides that it's time to pull out his own handgun because there must be something wrong with that model, right? Stop. Under no circumstances should you pull out your holstered firearm inside of a gun shop. I don't know who needs to hear that, but never do this. In fact, I know of many gun shops that have a zero tolerance policy of this. If you do that, you are banned from the shop for life. Like, you're not allowed to come back. So, if you're a new person watching this, do not do this under any circumstances. Unless you have confirmed permission from the person that you are talking to who is an employee of the shop that you have asked, hey, I've got a problem with my handgun. Can I get it out of the holster for you? And even then, many times they will say no. They will say, go out of the store, unload it, and bring it back in a case or something like that. Because this kind of situation should never happen. All of the guns that are behind the counter are in display configuration, which means that they've got some kind of chamber flag in them, and they are only handled by the teller, and then they hand them to you, and the safety checks happen between each individual. Make sure that the firearms safety rules are followed the entire time, and there is no live ammunition mixed in there. You bringing your firearm into the store is okay. In fact, I would say that it's pretty much the norm at this point in time. It should never leave the holster, because as soon as you have taken the firearm out of the holster, you have now introduced live ammunition into the room. Whether you are just taking the magazine out and working the round out of the action to hand it to the teller or not does not matter. You have now introduced something that has broken the protocol of all the guns in the room are unloaded. Now you also have a loaded magazine that more than most likely fits many of the guns in the room that could easily be mixed into something else by somebody who isn't paying attention. So it's just a bad situation. You should never do it. And I understand why places of business take a very heavy hand when it comes to this sort of thing. If you witness something like this happening inside your shop, the first thing that you should do is alert the staff, and if it isn't resolved rather rapidly, then you should leave and never go back. Schnoo does remove his magazine properly and then moves to improperly remove the cartridge from the chamber of the weapon by putting his hand over it, pointing the gun in the ground, and working it a few times. He then goes to try and do the takedown maneuver, which also requires the pulling of the trigger, and because he does not have the round properly extracted from the chamber, disaster ensues. The firearm discharges because it was not properly cleared. The round goes into the counter, probably jackets out a whole bunch on its way through, and then ultimately ends up in his buddy's abdomen, where it probably did horrific amounts of damage. So since we've already failed at the don't do stupid crap in gun shops, let's go ahead and talk about how to properly unload your firearm. And for that, I'm going to use my prop gun here, and it's going to demonstrate what is likely to happen. Think of these as equal probabilities. We've got the barrel, the ejection port, and the magazine well right here. The first thing that he did wrong, because he failed two things, was he covered the ejection port. Some guys try to do this cutesy bull crap where they try to eject the round and catch it at the same time. I'm going to say this once and only once. Your name is not John Wick. Do not do this crap. You grip the slide behind the ejection port on the serrations and pull. Let the round go to the ground and then pick it up. The second thing that he screwed up royally is you never point the gun at the ground when you are ejecting a live round. The reason you don't do that is because when the gun is pointed at the ground like this, it has three equally likely scenarios for its travel. The first is out the ejection port. Well, as we've previously mentioned, Dodo here has covered the ejection port, eliminating the possibility of that being a thing. And so it has two likely paths, either right back down in the breech or out the magazine well. Equally likely. The proper thing to do is orient the gun like this in your workspace, because when you do that, it is basically impossible for the round once properly ejected, even if the ejector fails, to go back up into the breech, because gravity is going to pull it that way. As long as the extractor is functional, even if the ejector is not, it will fall out of the ejection port. If it doesn't fall out of the ejection port, in the absence of a magazine, it's going to go right down the grip. It is not going to go back up into the breech. And to make sure that we do this, we grip it behind the ejection port by the serrations and work it a couple times just to make sure that it did that. The moral of the story here is that numbnuts here failed across the board. Nothing that he did was right. And you can clearly tell from watching the video that he is the gun guy there helping his buddy, right? Beware of those people. Be cognizant of the fact that firearms are inherently dangerous devices, and particularly dangerous when you mix them with people who don't know what they don't know. These things can devolve rapidly into injury, serious bodily harm, or even death if it goes that way. So if you see something like this happening at a gun shop, at the range, or just out with your buddies, just be cognizant of the fact that this can very rapidly change. And I guess what I will leave you with here today is a correction on something that I see often in video or in person, and that is the gun is designed to eject the rounds this way, whether it's brass or live rounds or whatever. The ejection port ejects the gun that way. The ejector ejects the gun that way. Never rotate the gun like this and either grip it with fingers or over the hand like this. That is wrong. You should never listen to anybody who you see do that. And the reason that is because it's going to do the same thing. It wants to eject this way, but if you orient the gun like this, it's going to eject the round up into the air. And I have seen, before the slide can fall, I've seen the gun get racked, the round land back in the ejection port and go right back up into the breech of the gun, into the chamber. That gun is now live, even though the person now thinks it is unloaded. It is a dangerous situation. You should never do that. The only correct way to properly unload a firearm is to orient the gun like this, eject the magazine, and then work the slide so you have all the help from gravity. If you are strength compromised, the proper way to perform this action is we accept the compromise of you not being able to grip the slide and rip it down like this. We say orient the gun straight in the safe direction, grip it by the slide like this, and then punch out, because your pec and your tricep is stronger than your bicep and your lat. So you do it that way, and you do it reps of 1. So you go like this and this and this to make sure the thing is properly cleared. And that is if you are strength compromised. I hope that you learned something in today's video. Please be safe out there, everybody. And if you feel so inclined, then spread this video out to people who need to see it.